I got terminated because a 70-year-old woman slapped me at a company event. That's the short version, the one I tell people when I don't feel like reliving the whole nightmare. It sounds absurd, like one of those viral posts that starts with, "You won't believe what happened at our team offsite." But it wasn't absurd when her diamond ring split my lip open and I tasted copper, while 40 of my coworkers suddenly found their appetizers fascinating. It was supposed to be a safe night for someone like me. Company dinners are easy when you're the quiet developer from back-end services. You show up on time. You shake the hands you're supposed to shake. You laugh half a second after everyone else so you don't seem weird. You leave before the drunk CTO starts calling everyone rock stars and talking about being a family. You don't make waves. That was the plan. The venue was one of those overpriced downtown restaurants our CEO loves. The kind with exposed brick, Edison bulbs, and a cocktail menu that reads like a chemistry experiment. Dim lighting that makes everyone look slightly more interesting than they are. Cloth napkins folded into shapes that probably have names. A tasting menu with 7 courses and wine pairings that cost more than my monthly car payment. They'd reserved the entire back room. Long table, assigned seating, little printed name cards next to each plate. I found my name somewhere in the middle section, not near the executives, not near the exits, middle of the herd, exactly where I've always lived. My manager, Ryan, was working the room like it was his engagement party. He's 38, always tanned, the kind of guy who plays volleyball on weekends and talks about crushing it without irony, the type who remembers your girlfriend's name but forgets which project you've been leading for 6 months. "Kevin, you made it," he said when he passed me. Hand on my shoulder, quick squeeze, already scanning past me to whoever was more important behind. "Wouldn't miss it," I lied. I'd almost called in sick. Crowds drain me. Small talk feels like doing cardio in a sauna. But missing a company event gets noted in ways that missing a deadline somehow doesn't. I noticed her before I knew who she was. Small, sharp, early 70s maybe, wearing a charcoal wrap dress that looked like it cost more than my entire wardrobe. She had the kind of posture that went extinct sometime in the 1960s. Back straight, chin elevated, like the room had been built for her personal inspection. She was seated at the head of the table where the executives clustered, right next to Ryan's empty chair, a glass of white wine, hovering near her lips, but never quite touching them. People approached her one by one, quick bows, nervous laughter. She barely acknowledged them. I assumed she was some investor's wife, a board member's mother, someone I'd never have to think about again. That assumption would cost me everything. The HR director, Vanessa, did the welcome speech. Of course she did. A few rehearsed jokes about finally being together, IRL, a cliché about our people being our greatest asset. The usual corporate poetry that means nothing. Glasses clinked. Conversations restarted in isolated clusters. Cutlery began to scrape against overpriced ceramics. I focused on my safe zones. The DevOps guy who only talks about Kubernetes and his home lab. The QA engineer who always has funny stories about her cats. I put my social mask on, nod, ask a follow-up question, take small bites, swallow, before I actually taste anything. It was going fine. The problem started with a server and a bottle of red wine. He came up behind me while I was standing. I'd gotten up to let someone squeeze past my chair toward the restroom. Tight quarters, too many people, not enough space. At the same moment, Ryan appeared at my elbow. "Kevin, have you met my mother yet?" That bright tone that means it's not really a question. I turned, half blocked by my own chair, saw the woman in charcoal, the one with the ancient posture. She was trying to rise from her seat at the head of the table. The server stepped left. I stepped right. Someone bumped my back. For a split second, all I saw was silver trays and crystal stemware. My elbow caught the server's arm. The bottle tipped. I watched, helpless and too slow, as a wave of Cabernet arced through the air like a slow-motion disaster. It didn't hit the table. It hit her. The wine splashed across her chest and shoulder, a dark stain blooming across the charcoal fabric like a wound opening. A few drops hit her face. One landed just below her eye, slid down her cheek like a theatrical tear. "Oh my God," I said, already reaching for napkins. "I'm so sorry. Ma'am, I didn't—" She moved faster than I expected, faster than someone her age should move. Her hand came up, fingers tight around those heavy rings, and she slapped me across the face so hard my head snapped sideways. The room went silent on impact, like someone had hit the mute button on reality. The sound echoed off the exposed brick, not movie loud, but loud enough that every person in that private room heard it. My cheek burned. Her ring had a stone in it, something that caught the corner of my mouth. I tasted iron. "You clumsy idiot," she hissed, not bothering to lower her voice. "Do you have any idea what this dress costs? Look what you've done." The server froze, bottle still in his hand, eyes wide with horror that had nothing to do with his job performance. I stood there, napkin in my fist, blood on my lip, and watched 40 professionals suddenly become very interested in their bread plates. No one moved. No one spoke. No one did anything. Ryan finally stepped forward, but not toward me. "Mom, are you okay? Let me get you cleaned up." He guided her away from the table, shooting me a look over his shoulder. Not concern, not even anger. Disappointment. The kind reserved for subordinates who have just made you look bad in front of people who matter. I stood, alone, in the silence. Wine dripping from the tablecloth, blood dripping from my lip, and the slow, horrible realization that I was somehow the villain of this story. Before I tell you how I dismantled the careers of everyone who left me bleeding in that restaurant, do me a quick favor. If you enjoy stories about corporate bullies getting destroyed by the quiet people they underestimate, hit that subscribe button. It fuels my cold, calculating heart, and trust me, you're going to want to see what happens when the silent ones finally speak. Now, where was I right? Standing alone, with wine on my shirt and blood on my face, about to discover just how quickly a company will sacrifice you to protect the people who matter. Let me back up. I'm Kevin Chen. I'm a senior back-end engineer at Nexus Technologies. We build enterprise software for logistics companies. Nothing glamorous, nothing sexy, just code that makes sure packages get where they're supposed to go. I've been here 7 years. 7 years of clean performance reviews. 7 years of shipping on time. 7 years of being the guy who fixes other people's mistakes at 2 a.m. without complaining. I'm not a rock star. I'm not a disruptor. I'm not going to be on the cover of any tech magazines, but I'm reliable, and in this industry, reliable is rarer than genius. The office smells like energy drinks and anxiety, open floor plan, standing desks, a ping-pong table that nobody uses because we're all too busy, motivational posters about innovation that were clearly chosen by someone who's never actually innovated anything. Ryan became my manager 3 years ago. Before that, I reported to someone who actually understood the code base, someone who valued the people who kept the lights on. Then the reorg happened, and suddenly, I reported to Ryan. Ryan, who came from product. Ryan, who spoke fluent buzzword but couldn't read a stack trace. Ryan, whose main qualification seemed to be that he went to Stanford with the CEO's nephew. He wasn't evil. Not really. Just the particular kind of incompetent that rises in corporate environments because confidence is easier to evaluate than competence. He took credit for my work twice in my first month under him. I said nothing. He promoted his buddy from sales to a technical lead position. I said nothing. He forgot to submit my performance review on time, costing me a raise. I said nothing, because that's what you do when you're the quiet one. You keep your head down. You do good work. You trust that eventually someone will notice. Nobody noticed. What I didn't know that night at dinner was that Ryan's mother, Dorothy, wasn't just some random elderly guest. She was Dorothy Harrington Cole, widow of Richard Cole, founder of Cole Semiconductor, silent investor in half the startups in the Bay Area, and, most importantly, the person who had written the check that kept Nexus afloat during our Series B crunch. Her money was in the walls. Her opinion shaped boardroom decisions. Her comfort was, apparently, more important than my dignity or my face. After the slap, things moved fast, the wrong kind of fast. Ryan returned from cleaning up his mother, walked directly to Vanessa, the HR director. They huddled in the corner, shooting glances at me while I dabbed at my split lip with a napkin. I should have left, should have walked out the door and called a lawyer. But I was in shock, the kind of shock that makes you stand there like an idiot, waiting for someone to tell you what the script says next. Vanessa approached me with that particular HR smile, the one that's all teeth and no warmth. Kevin, I think it would be best if you headed home for the evening. I was just standing there. The server. I understand it was an accident. But Mrs. Cole is very upset, and we need to manage the situation. Manage the situation, not investigate what happened. Not check if I was okay. Manage the situation. I looked around the room, 40 faces, all carefully avoiding my eyes. The DevOps guy I'd been talking to 5 minutes ago was suddenly fascinated by his phone. The QA engineer had moved to the far end of the table. I was already being erased. Fine, I said quietly. I'll go. I drove home with dried blood on my lip and wine stains on my shirt, sat in my apartment, stared at the wall, tried to process how a dinner party had turned into a crime scene with me as the perpetrator. My phone buzzed around midnight. Email from HR. Subject: administrative leave. Pending investigation. Kevin, due to the incident at this evening's company event, you are being placed on administrative leave effective immediately. Please do not come into the office or access company systems until further notice. We will be in touch regarding next steps. Vanessa Torres, VP of Human Resources. Administrative leave. For getting slapped. For having wine spilled on someone by a server. I didn't even bump that hard. I read the email 3 times. Waited for the part where they asked for my side of the story. It never came. The next morning, my badge was deactivated. I know because I tried to log into the VPN to grab some personal files and got an authentication error. They'd already locked me out. 3 days of silence. 3 days of staring at my phone, waiting for someone to call. 3 days of replaying the moment in my head, trying to figure out what I could have done differently. On day 4, the termination email arrived. Subject: separation of employment. Kevin, Following our investigation into the incident at the company dinner, we have determined that your conduct was inconsistent with Nexus Technologies' values and professional standards. Your employment is terminated effective immediately. Please return all company property within 48 hours. Final paycheck and COBRA information will be mailed to your address on file. Vanessa Torres, VP of Human Resources. Investigation. What investigation? No one had asked me a single question. No one had interviewed witnesses. No one had reviewed the security footage. I wasn't investigated. I was sacrificed. But here's the thing about being the quiet one in tech. The invisible one. The one who keeps his head down and does his work. You learn things. You see things. You know where the bodies are buried because you're the one who built the cemetery. And I knew something about the night of that dinner that Ryan and his mother and Vanessa definitely didn't want discovered. The restaurant had security cameras. Good ones, the kind that capture everything in high definition. I knew because I'd done a security audit of that exact venue 6 months earlier when we were considering it for a client event. I'd walked through their systems, made recommendations, had a contact in their IT department who owed me a favor. One phone call, that's all it took. Kevin, long time. Man, what do you need? That private event room last Friday. I need the footage. That's kind of against policy. I know. I also know you're running an outdated version of their POS system with a SQL injection vulnerability I flagged in my report, the one your manager ignored. Silence on the line. How much footage do you need? Everything from 7 p.m. to 10 p.m. Every angle. Give me an hour. The footage arrived in my inbox 63 minutes later. Multiple angles, crystal clear. I watched it 17 times. What actually happened? The server approached from behind me. Someone at the table. I could now see it was Ryan's assistant. Probably drunk, bumped into my back. My elbow made contact with the server's arm. The wine tipped. But here's the thing. The footage showed that I couldn't see in the chaos. The server overcorrected. Instead of pulling the bottle back, he pushed it forward. The wine didn't spill because of my elbow. It spilled because he panicked and basically threw it. And Dorothy Cole, she was already standing, already moving toward me. Her hand was raised before the wine even hit her dress. She didn't slap me because of the wine. She slapped me because I was in her way, because I was a nobody who had the audacity to exist in her space. The wine was just an excuse. I watched the footage again, frame by frame, watching her face in the moments before impact. No surprise, no shock, just cold, practiced contempt. This wasn't a reaction. It was a decision that a 70-year-old woman from old money made in a split second because she absolutely knew that nothing would happen to her. And she was right. Almost. But that wasn't even the most interesting thing on the footage. After I left, the camera caught something else. Ryan and Vanessa in their corner huddle, and a third person joining them. Dorothy Cole herself, still in her stained dress, pointing at them, clearly giving orders. Whatever was said, both Ryan and Vanessa nodded frantically. Within minutes, Vanessa was on her phone. The next morning, my access was revoked. This wasn't an HR investigation. This was a cover-up, orchestrated by a 70-year-old woman who was used to making problems disappear. I had the footage, but footage alone wouldn't be enough. I needed context. I needed witnesses. I needed someone on the inside who hadn't been compromised. And I knew exactly who to call. His name was Marcus Webb, senior staff engineer, 15 years at Nexus. The kind of old-school developer who remembered when the company actually had values beyond quarterly earnings. We'd worked together on the infrastructure team before Ryan's reorg scattered us. He was one of the few people who'd ever actually said thank you for the late-night fixes. "Marcus, it's Kevin. Kevin, I heard what happened. That was messed up. Man, did anyone from HR contact you? Ask what you saw?" A pause. "No, nobody asked me anything." "Did you see what actually happened?" "I saw enough." "You didn't do anything wrong. That woman just snapped." "Would you be willing to put that in writing?" Another pause. Longer this time. "Kevin, I've got a mortgage. 2 kids in private school. I can't afford to. I'm not asking you to go to war. I'm asking you to tell the truth. In writing. Confidentially. I'll handle the rest." He was quiet for a long moment. "Let me think about it." He called back the next morning. "I'll do it, but I want you to know something else. I'm not the only one who saw what happened. Half the table saw that woman attack you. And half the table also saw HR decide to blame you without asking a single question. Anyone else willing to talk? I'll ask around." Quietly. Marcus was true to his word. Over the next 48 hours, I received 6 written statements, 6 witnesses who saw the same thing I saw, 6 employees who had never been contacted by HR's so-called investigation. Each statement told the same story, different words, same truth. The wine was clearly an accident. The woman's reaction was completely disproportionate. I saw her hand come up before anyone could have reacted. It was like she was waiting for an excuse. HR never asked me what I saw. Nobody from management contacted me at all. Kevin didn't do anything wrong. He was just standing there when everything happened. One statement stood out, from a woman in finance I'd never even met. "I've worked here for 12 years. I've seen how this company protects certain people. What happened to Kevin Chen wasn't an investigation. It was a cover-up. And I'm tired of staying quiet about things like this." I read that one several times, wondered how many other stories were buried in this company, how many other people had been sacrificed to protect the people who mattered. Now I had evidence. Now I had witnesses. Now I needed leverage, and I knew exactly where to find it. Every company has a board of directors, and every board has at least one member who actually cares about governance. At Nexus, that person was Sandra Mitchell. She joined the board 2 years ago, former federal prosecutor, current partner at a white shoe law firm. The kind of person who asked uncomfortable questions at quarterly meetings and actually expected answers. I'd never met her personally, but I knew she existed because Ryan complained about her constantly. Mitchell's asking for documentation again. Mitchell wants to review the harassment policy. Mitchell is such a pain in the ass. If Ryan hated her, she was probably exactly who I needed. Getting to a board member when you're a fired engineer isn't easy. They don't exactly list their cell phones in the company directory. But I'd built the company's contact management system. I knew where everything was stored. And I still had a personal laptop with some very interesting cached data. I found her email address, sent a message with the subject line, "Wrongful termination. Evidence of HR misconduct." She responded in 4 hours. "Mr. Chen, I've reviewed your initial documentation. I'd like to meet in person tomorrow, 2 p.m. My office. Come alone." Her office was in one of those glass towers downtown, 47th floor, the kind of view that makes you understand why people want power. She was smaller than I expected, late 50s, silver hair, reading glasses on a chain. But her eyes were sharp, the eyes of someone who had spent decades putting people in prison. "Mr. Chen, sit." I sat. "Tell me everything. From the beginning. Don't leave anything out." I talked for an hour. The dinner, the slap, the termination, the footage, the witness statements, the huddle between Ryan, Vanessa, and Dorothy Cole. She listened without interrupting, took notes on a legal pad, asked occasional clarifying questions. When I finished, she was quiet for a long moment. "You understand what you're alleging," she said finally. "You're claiming that an investor conspired with company management to wrongfully terminate an employee and cover up an assault." "I'm not claiming anything. I'm showing you evidence. Evidence that could expose the company to significant liability. Evidence that shows I did nothing wrong and was fired anyway." She tapped her pen against the legal pad. "Why come to me? You could have gone to a lawyer, filed a lawsuit, talked to the press. Because I don't want money. I don't want revenge. I want the truth on record. And I want the people who did this to face consequences. Even if those consequences affect the company you worked for. The company fired me for getting assaulted. I don't owe them protection." She almost smiled. Almost. "Mr. Chen, I'm going to need copies of everything you have. The footage, the statements, any documentation of your termination. I have it all on a flash drive." "Good." She stood. "I'm calling an emergency board meeting. You should expect to hear from us within 72 hours. What happens now? Now we find out who else knew what actually happened and who decided to bury it. The next 3 days were the longest of my life. I didn't hear from anyone. No calls from HR. No threatening letters from company lawyers. Just silence. I spent the time organizing my documentation, backing up everything to multiple locations, writing out a detailed timeline of events. If this went wrong, if Mitchell couldn't make anything happen, I wanted to be ready for a legal battle. On day 3, my phone rang. Unknown number. "Mr. Chen, this is Margaret Okonkwo, General Counsel for Nexus Technologies. The board has requested your presence at a meeting tomorrow at 10 a.m. Can you confirm your attendance?" "I'll be there. Please come alone. This is a confidential governance matter." I hung up, stared at the wall, wondered what I was walking into. The board meeting was held in a conference room I'd never seen before. Executive floor, the part of the building where people like me don't usually go. The elevator required a special key card. The hallway was carpeted, not tiled. The art on the walls probably cost more than my annual salary. Long table, leather chairs, that particular corporate smell of expensive coffee and quiet power. A pitcher of water sat untouched in the center of the table. Crystal glasses that probably weren't from IKEA. Everything designed to remind you that serious decisions happen here. Sandra Mitchell was there. So was the board chair, a silver-haired man I recognized from the company website, and 2 other board members I didn't know. Ryan was not there. Vanessa was not there. Dorothy Cole was definitely not there. That felt significant. "Mr. Chen, thank you for coming." The board chair gestured to a seat at the far end of the table. "I'm William Hayes. I believe you've met Sandra Mitchell." I nodded. "Let me be direct." Hayes folded his hands on the table. "The board has spent the last 72 hours conducting an internal investigation into the events surrounding your termination. What we found is troubling." Mitchell slid a folder across the table to him. He opened it, started reading aloud. "Security footage confirms that the wine spillage was primarily caused by server error, not employee action. 6 Written witness statements corroborate that the physical assault was unprovoked. HR records show no formal investigation was conducted prior to termination. Email records show coordination between senior management and an external party regarding the termination decision. He looked up at me. Mr. Chen, you were wrongfully terminated. The board acknowledges this unequivocally. I didn't say anything. Waited for the other shoe. Furthermore, Hayes continued, our investigation has revealed significant governance failures. Decisions that should have required board approval were made unilaterally. Policies designed to protect employees were deliberately circumvented, and individuals in positions of trust prioritized personal relationships over professional obligations. Mitchell spoke for the first time. The HR director has been removed, pending the completion of our audit. Several other staff members are being questioned. There will be restructuring. She didn't say fired, but the meaning was clear. There's more, Hayes said. I waited. Ryan Matthews has resigned, effective immediately. He was offered the opportunity to depart voluntarily in exchange for a non-disclosure agreement regarding the circumstances of his departure. Ryan was gone. The man who'd taken credit for my work, who'd overlooked me for 3 years, who'd let his mother assault me, and then helped orchestrate my firing. Gone. I thought about all the times he'd promised to look into my promotion. All the times he'd said next quarter or when the timing is right. All the times I'd believed him. 3 years of waiting, 3 years of hoping, 3 years of trusting that patience would pay off. It didn't. What paid off was documentation. What paid off was the truth. What paid off was refusing to disappear quietly. What about her? I asked quietly. Dorothy Cole. Hayes and Mitchell exchanged a look. Mrs. Cole is no longer an investor in Nexus Technologies, Hayes said carefully. Her shares have been purchased by the company at fair market value. She has been asked to avoid any contact with current or former employees. Asked to avoid contact. Rich people code for, we can't actually do anything to her. But we've made it clear she's not welcome. It wasn't perfect justice, but it was something. Mitchell leaned forward. The board finds it unacceptable that an employee was assaulted, blamed, and terminated without investigation. We believe you deserve not only reinstatement, but redress. What does that mean? I asked carefully. The board chair slid a folder across the table. Inside, a reinstatement letter, a formal written apology from the company, a compensation adjustment, and an offer, a promotion, senior staff engineer, the role 1 level above, where Ryan had kept me trapped for 3 years. I stared at it, then up at them. Why are you offering me this? The other board member, a woman I didn't know, answered softly. Because you handled an impossible situation with more dignity than everyone above you. Mitchell's eyes held mine. Because you told the truth when no one else would. And because men like you are the ones companies lose when leadership stops paying attention. Silence settled over the table, but it wasn't heavy this time. It felt clean. I closed the folder. I need a moment to think. Take all the time you need, Hayes said. I stepped out into the hallway, stood near the window, looked out at the parking lot, the same lot I'd walked across a week ago, feeling small and disposable. Now it looked different. Or maybe I did. After a minute, the door opened behind me. Mitchell. She didn't speak at first, just stood beside me, looking out the same window. Finally, she said, You don't owe them loyalty. Not after how you were treated. I know. But you also don't owe them bitterness. You get to choose what kind of person you become after something like this. I turned to her. Why did you help me? Really? She gave me the smallest smile. Because I've been doing this a long time. And people like you are the ones organizations lose when nobody pays attention. I don't like losing good people. She straightened her jacket. What you do next is your choice. Promotion, transfer, or you walk away with a clean name and a strong reference. Your call. Something in my chest settled, like a weight finally clicking into place. Thank you, I said quietly. She nodded once. Don't thank me. Thank yourself. You told the truth. I just made sure people had to listen. She walked back inside. I stayed another minute, watching cars move through the lot. Lives continuing, everything painfully normal. But something in me had stopped shaking. When I returned to the conference room, I sat down, opened the folder, and signed where they'd marked. Not out of gratitude, out of clarity. The pen felt heavier than it should have. One signature, 3 pages, a new chapter. I thought about all the times I'd signed things without really reading them. Employment agreements, NDAs, performance reviews, trusting that the system would take care of me if I just played by the rules. That trust had cost me. But it had also taught me. Now, I read everything. Every clause, every footnote, every definition buried in the appendix. Paranoid maybe. Prepared definitely. When everything was finished, Hayes stood to shake my hand. Welcome back, Mr. Chen, Mitchell added, more quietly. You earned this. I left the building without looking over my shoulder. No whispers, no stares, just the click of my shoes on tile and the steady beat of my own pulse, even controlled, mine. Outside, the air smelled like concrete after rain, sharp and clean. As I reached my car, my phone buzzed. Text from an unknown number. Kevin, we heard what happened. Mom is furious. Please call me. I want to explain. Ryan. I looked at it for a long moment. Then I deleted it. Not out of spite, out of peace. Some endings don't need a dramatic confrontation. Some endings are just quiet, like setting something down that was heavy for too long. I got in my car, started the engine, let myself breathe the way you breathe when the world finally stops pressing its thumb on your throat. And for the first time since that slap echoed through the restaurant, I felt steady, untangled, mine again. 6 months later, I'm in my new office. The one with a door, the one with a window, the one with my name on a placard outside. Senior staff engineer, platform architecture. The role they'd been dangling in front of me for years. The role Ryan had used as a carrot to keep me working late and staying quiet. The role I finally got, not because I played politics, but because I told the truth. The first thing I did in my new position was review the team structure. Found 3 other engineers who'd been stuck in the same limbo I'd been in. Good people doing invisible work. I promoted 2 of them within my first month. Not revenge, just recognition. The kind of recognition I never got until I demanded it. Marcus Webb is on my team now. So is the QA engineer with the cat stories, the DevOps guy who only talks about Kubernetes. We've built something good, a team where people actually talk to each other, where credit goes to the people who do the work. Not revolutionary, just decent. Last week, I got a message from the server, the one from the restaurant, the one who'd frozen with the bottle in his hand while I bled. Mr. Chen, I don't know if you remember me. I just wanted to say, I'm sorry I didn't speak up that night. I was afraid of losing my job. I've thought about it every day since. I hope you're doing okay. I wrote back, "Thank you. I understand fear. It took me a long time to stop being afraid too. I hope you're doing well. Some wounds heal, some don't. You learn to live with both." Vanessa Torres found a job at another company. I heard through the grapevine that she lasted 8 months before the same patterns emerged. Some people don't learn. Ryan is consulting now. His LinkedIn says, strategic advisor to early stage ventures, which is rich person code for unemployed but too proud to admit it. His mother, Dorothy Cole, is still wealthy, still attending charity galas, still probably slapping people who get in her way. Money protects. It always has. I made peace with that. What I couldn't have predicted was the ripple effect. After Mitchell's investigation went public internally, other stories started surfacing. Other employees who'd been quietly pushed out. Other incidents that HR had buried. The board commissioned a full culture audit. New policies, new training, new accountability structures. Not because they suddenly grew consciences, because they realized that ignoring problems doesn't make them disappear. It just makes them expensive. Expensive in lawsuits, expensive in turnover, expensive in talent that walks out the door and never comes back. The company learned a lesson that week, not about morality, about math. Good employees who get treated badly become expensive employees when they fight back. And cover-ups always cost more than honesty. Simple equations, the kind even executives can understand. Last month, I got a message from Mitchell. She left the board, moving on to other things. "Kevin, hope you're well. Just wanted to say what you did mattered. Not just for you, for everyone who came after. Keep building good things." I read it 3 times, then saved it in a folder I labeled evidence, old habits. The cut on my lip healed without a scar. The bruise on my dignity took longer. Some nights, I still feel the sting, still hear the silence that followed, still see 40 faces suddenly fascinated by bread plates. But I also remember something else. I remember Marcus picking up his phone when I called. I remember 6 people putting their names on statements. I remember Mitchell believing me before anyone else did. For every person who looked away, there was someone who didn't. For every coward who protected their comfort, there was someone who chose truth. That matters. That's worth remembering. But I learned something in that restaurant. Something important. Being quiet doesn't mean being powerless. Keeping your head down doesn't mean you can't look up when it matters. And sometimes, the people who underestimate you are the ones who have the most to lose. I didn't become a different person. I'm still the guy who shows up on time, does good work, and leaves before the VP starts calling everyone family. But I'm also the guy who kept the receipts, who found the footage, who told the truth when everyone else found their bread plates fascinating. And that guy, he got the corner office. Thanks for staying until the end. If you made it this far, if you enjoyed watching the quiet one finally speak up, do me a favor. Hit that subscribe button. Share this story with someone who's ever been overlooked, someone who's been blamed for something they didn't do, someone who's been told to stay quiet and wait their turn. Tell them the truth matters. Tell them documentation is your friend. Tell them to keep the receipts, because the quiet ones are always watching. The invisible ones are always documenting, and the overlooked ones are always waiting, waiting for the moment when patience runs out, waiting for the moment when silence breaks, waiting for the moment when all those receipts finally get read, and remind them that sometimes the best revenge isn't loud or dramatic. Sometimes It's just surviving long enough to watch the people who wronged you lose everything they were trying to protect. They say the meek shall inherit the earth. They're wrong. The meek shall inherit whatever they're patient enough to document. And sometimes, that's the corner office. The office with the door that closes. The office with the window that overlooks the parking lot. The office where people knock before entering. The office I earned. Not by playing politics. Not by being loud. Not by being the most confident person in the room. By being the most prepared. See you in the next one.